Over just 200 years, the entire environment of Virginia was completely remade. I mean, a landscape that had been shaped by Native Americans for thousands of years was totally transformed by a new economy and, well, a new people. This is a story of a massive ecological collision and the profound changes it left behind.
So when the first English explorers showed up, this is what they saw. Back in 1584, a guy named Arthur Barlow described Virginia as this perfect paradise, just overflowing with abundance. But here's the thing. What he was looking at was not some untouched wilderness, not even close.
So what was this world really like before those European ships arrived on the scene? Well, far from being an empty wilderness, it was a really sophisticated, well-managed territory that had been carefully shaped by the people living there for centuries. Right at the heart of this managed landscape was the Powhatan Paramount Chiefdom. This was a seriously powerful political force led by Chief Wahunsoon Kanag. And we're not talking about a small group of people here. This was a highly organized society of about 20,000 people spread across 150 villages, all connected by culture, family, and politics. You see, the Powhatan people had this incredibly deep understanding of their ecosystem. They didn't just live in nature, they were actively managing it. They grew the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, and they used a really clever long fallow system to keep the soil fertile. They even used controlled fires to clear out the underbrush, which made for better grazing for deer. It was a genuinely sustainable, symbiotic relationship with the land. And then, 1607, everything changed. The arrival of the first permanent English settlers at Jamestown wasn't just a meeting of two different cultures. No, it was the start of an ecological collision that was going to reshape the very soil, the plants, and the animals of Virginia forever.
To really get your head around the scale of this change, you have to understand this idea called the portmanteau biota. Now, a portmanteau is like an old-fashioned suitcase, and the idea here is that the English didn't show up alone. They basically brought a biological suitcase with them, an entire invasive ecosystem packed onto their ships, a force that was about to completely re-engineer a continent. So what was in this biological suitcase? Well, first up, livestock. Cattle and pigs were just let loose, and they immediately started competing with native animals and trampling Native American fields. Then you had the European plants, not just crops like wheat, but weeds, things like dandelions that just took over. And maybe most devastating of all were the invisible invaders, pathogens like smallpox, diseases the native population had absolutely no immunity to. But the single biggest driver of change, the economic engine that was literally going to consume the landscape, was one particular plant. And it wasn't one the English brought with them, but one they figured out how to perfect for a global market. Yeah, I'm talking about tobacco. You know, the colony was really struggling for a while there. But then John Rolfe introduces this sweeter strain of tobacco from the West Indies. And suddenly, Virginia had a cash crop that Europe just went nuts for. This golden weed created a massive economic boom. And with that boom came an absolutely insatiable hunger for one thing: more and more land. This new tobacco economy created this brutal, totally unsustainable cycle. Planters would clear these ancient, beautiful forests just to plant this really demanding crop. But in just 3 or 4 years, tobacco would completely strip the soil of all its nutrients. The land would become useless, infertile, forcing the planters to just abandon it and move on to clear the next patch of forest. There's a name for this process: soil exhaustion. And it's so much more than just tired dirt. It's a complete chemical change in the land itself. See, tobacco is a really hungry plant. It just sucks vital nutrients like nitrogen and potassium right out of the soil, leaving it acidic and barren. This wasn't farming, not like the Powhatan practiced it. This was basically a form of land mining. Okay, so this relentless cycle of clearing, planting, using up the land, and abandoning it. Well, it had massive long-term consequences. And not just for the environment, but for the people who had called that land home for generations. I mean, the physical damage was just immense. Without the forests to hold the soil in place, and with all that constant hoeing, the land just washed away. By the 18th century, travelers were writing about seeing these vast, deep gullies scarring the landscape, a permanent mark left by all those abandoned tobacco fields. And this endless need for new land put the colonists on a direct collision course with the Powhatan. As the English pushed further and further inland, it just led to decades of brutal conflict. When you couple that with the devastating impact of all the new diseases, the Powhatan chiefdom was basically shattered. They lost their ancestral lands and were eventually forced onto these small, confined reservations. The human cost of this ecological revolution was just staggering. In a little over 60 years, a thriving population of 20,000 people was reduced to just 1,800. I mean, that is a demographic collapse on a scale that's almost impossible to comprehend. It's a truly devastating and tragic part of this story. So by the end of this 200-year period we're looking at, a fundamentally new Virginia had been created. You could say the ecological revolution was complete. And the transformation was total. Just look at the difference. In 1600, you have diverse forests, communal land use, sustainable agriculture, and a thriving native population. By 1800, widespread deforestation, land divided into private plantations with depleted soil, and the Powhatan people, what was left of them, confined to reservations. The revolution was indeed complete. And that really leaves us with a pretty critical question to think about, doesn't it? The story of colonial Virginia was driven by the economics of tobacco. It makes you wonder, what are the golden weeds of our time? How are the demands of our own global economy continuing to remake our landscapes today? Okay, let's just get right into this. We all think we know the story of the moon landing, right? I mean, it's probably one of the greatest things humanity has ever pulled off. But what if I told you that the real story, the one that made it all possible, didn't start in the 1960s with rockets, but way back with railroads and factories over 100 years earlier? You see this picture, this one footprint? It stands for such an incredible journey. It was this massive national effort. We're talking 400,000 people all working together, and it just totally captured the imagination of the entire world. A true giant leap for mankind. But how does a nation even get to a place where it can dream that big?
To really understand the sheer ambition of the Apollo program, we've got to go back. I mean, way, way back. All the way to the end of the Civil War. That's when America was facing a challenge that was, in its own way, just as massive as trying to reach for the stars.
So let's start with what you might call the first American moonshot. This period of about 50 years right after the Civil War, when the country literally had to build a new identity for itself from the ashes of a terrible conflict. I mean, just try to picture it. The country was broken, the South was in ruins, and the whole idea of a United States was, well, on pretty shaky ground. The government had this enormous task of not just rebuilding, but completely redefining what America even was. So here's the thing. The nation basically committed itself to this wild goal, to go from being a divided, mostly farming society into a single, unified industrial powerhouse. This was a project on a scale that was just unimaginable, and it required a complete reinvention of the country. And for a project that huge, you need people, a lot of people. This incredible wave of immigration, 27.5 million people, provided all the manpower, all the different skills needed to build the railroads, work in the factories, and settle a continent. It was the biggest migration in human history up to that point.
And the pace of all this change? It was absolutely breathtaking. In just a couple of decades, the Transcontinental Railroad literally stitched the country together. New technologies like the Bessemer steel process and the telegraph just put industry on overdrive. And bam, by the turn of the century, the US had blown past the old European powers to become the world's leading industrial nation. Just an incredible transformation.
But let's be real here. This first moonshot was not a smooth ride. It was messy. This era saw the rise of Jim Crow laws, absolutely brutal conflicts between labor and business, and huge social chaos. Building a nation, it turns out, is a lot like launching a rocket. It's difficult, and it can be pretty turbulent.
Okay, now let's fast forward 100 years. That industrial foundation, that technological power that was built in the late 19th century, well, that's what made the next great national project possible, the literal moonshot. The thing that was so audacious about Kennedy's challenge wasn't just the idea of going to the moon. It was the deadline, before the decade is out. That was a clear, no wiggle room, almost impossible goal that totally galvanized the entire country, a lot like that post-war goal of industrialization did a century before. And that huge challenge was then broken down into this whole series of incredibly specific, high-stakes tasks. See, this wasn't just about planting a flag. It was a really complex scientific mission where, the most important goal of all was bringing the crew back home alive. The stakes just could not have been higher. Now, to get there, you needed pure industrial power. The Saturn V, look at this thing. It wasn't just a rocket. It was a 36-story skyscraper of controlled explosion, burning 15 tons of fuel every single second. That's the kind of raw power that was only possible because of that whole century of industrial development that came before it. And right at the very heart of all this incredible machinery, you had the human element. You've got 3 highly trained astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. And they're flying these unbelievably complex machines, the command module Columbia and the lunar module Eagle. These were the ships for one of the greatest voyages in human history. But those final moments, they were anything but smooth. As the Eagle was coming down to the lunar surface, the onboard computer just starts spitting out error codes, these program alarms that nobody had ever seen in the simulations. The folks in mission control had to make these split-second life-or-death decisions on whether to call the whole thing off, with the whole world watching.
The tension was just unbearable. Armstrong had to take over manual control to steer away from a field of giant boulders. And as this quote shows, they were literally running on fumes. They had just seconds of fuel left in the tank when that contact light finally lit up.
And then, those words. The words that made an entire planet breathe a collective sigh of relief. Armstrong's super calm voice just cutting through all the static. They did it. They were on the moon. This amazing image of Buzz Aldrin on the surface, that's the payoff for that whole terrifying journey. A few hours later, something like 600 million people, the biggest TV audience in history at the time, watched Armstrong take that first step. And his words just perfectly captured what that moment meant, not just for America, but for every single person on Earth.
So what's the ultimate connection here between these 2 huge American projects? Well, it's really all about how they fundamentally changed the nation's mindset and its whole sense of what is even possible. This right here, this really captures a huge cultural shift. The moon landing literally changed our language. Before 1969, saying you could fly to the moon was the classic way of saying something was absolutely impossible. After Apollo 11, it became the benchmark for achieving the impossible.
And the legacy wasn't just a metaphor either. The massive investment in Apollo kicked off all these technological revolutions that we still benefit from every single day. The push to make computers smaller gave us modern electronics, advances in materials, communications, even microwave ovens and food storage. A lot of that came directly out of the space program.
So when you look at the whole story, you see this amazing through line of ambition. The first moonshot built the industrial nation. The second one took that nation to another planet. And it really makes you wonder, what is the great national project, the great moonshot, that's going to define our generation? What impossible goal are we going to set for ourselves?